Hello, everyone.
Hello, Marty.
Thank you, Bill, for signing up on the subcommittees.
Yeah, I apologize for being a little vague about where I should sign, but
No,
it works.
It did work. That's the important thing.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
I think we'll wait a few minutes to let everybody sign on. Andrew just sent us a message that there's a handful or so of comments and questions for the committee that we can address one at a time. So I'll get things started in a couple of minutes and we can take things from there.
Hi, Marty. This is Cesar. How's everyone doing?
I am doing wonderful, Mr. Felice. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm actually at the store waiting for my vehicle, so I may have to drop off for a little bit when I travel back home whenever I get the vehicle back.
Well, good luck on that. I hope it's all fixed and it was super cheap.
No, it was just an oil change. Hopefully, it'll be okay.
Okay, that's good. And I'm going to give everybody a couple more minutes just for the public to figure out how to get going and everybody from our task force to sign on. And then I'll start with some opening comments.
Sounds good.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I will get us started here. I don't believe anybody can interact with us from the public, but they will be able to view this live through YouTube streaming. So I will begin by saying good evening, everyone. My name is Marty Floss. I'm the director of the Institute for Law and Justice at Hilbert College. I'm a member of a task force on police reform in Erie County. I have a great bunch of public representatives that have been asked and have given of their time, generously, I might add, to help Erie County, the sheriffs, and particularly the road patrol to better understand what's going on in today's world and to respond to things in a positive way. Um, Specifically, we are responding to a governor's mandate that requires all law enforcement entities to uh, think about reinventing law enforcement in the criminal justice system and doing so through a collaborative, community-based approach. And so we have done just that and put together this collaborative task force. And today represents the first time that the community is being asked to provide comments and give their perspectives, any ideas that could be used to help improve the road sheriffs and their duties within Erie County. I will start by just giving a little context. We've had a couple of meetings as a task force. We'll be able to update things in a few minutes after we respond to questions. And we're trying to be as open and transparent to the community as possible. We're showing that today through our actions by asking for as much community feedback as possible. Ultimately, this committee will need to consider all of the feedback and make recommendations. We will have a period where the community can then respond to our recommendations. And then all of this, we are on a very tight time schedule. All of this needs to go back to the Erie County Legislature and ultimately back to the governor by April 1st, 2021. So we have a tall task ahead of us. The task force members have been updated on this time frame, and we've all agreed to work hard to try our best to make recommendations that will improve policing in Erie County. Now, before we get going, I thought I would just maybe make a couple of comments. I'm a professor of criminal justice. I can't help myself. So I will suggest that perhaps it would be a nice thing. I believe both the community and law enforcement could agree on something that's been established for a long, long time. And for anybody who's studied criminal justice and policing in particular, know that it all started with a gentleman called Sir Robert Peel. And Sir Robert Peel started the bobbies in England. And quite frankly, if you go over, and I will include this to all of the task force members, I have a couple of sources that I'm using as a basis for my comments now. But, he gave 9 principles for policing, and I think they are ever true today as they were then. I'm not going to go through all 9, but I will tell you that there are 3 general features that come from that. And so to wrap up or describe these 9 principles, we could look at 3 core ideas. 1, the goal is preventing crime, not catching criminals. If the police stop crime before it happens, they don't have to punish citizens or suppress their rights. An effective police department doesn't have high arrest stats. Its community has low crime rates. That's one of the general core ideas. The second is the key to preventing crime is earning public support. Every community member must share that responsibility of preventing crime. And if they are all volunteer, as if they were all volunteer members of the force, they will only accept this responsibility if the community supports and trusts the police. And the third core idea that comes from these principles is that the police earn public support by respecting community principles. Winning public approval requires hard work to build reputation, enforcing the laws impartially, hiring officers who represent and understand the community, and using force only as a last resort. And now that you have heard these 3 core ideas that describe the 9 principles that began policing in the first place, I think we could all come to an agreement that these are goals that we should all strive to achieve. And the Erie County Sheriff's Office is no different in that regard. So that is part 1 of my lecture. There will be an examination for all people following this presentation. Okay, no, there won't. I'm a smart aleck. The second part I thought would be helpful would be for this committee and the public to understand that we have traveled through several what I will call eras of the administration of law enforcement. And to better understand what those eras are will help us understand from whence we came and can help us in our future directions. So, like all administrative practices, not just law enforcement, we typically trace them back to the 1880s. In law enforcement, this era, the industrial era, refers to 1880s to the 1950s, and it all began with the work of Woodrow Wilson, one-time president of the United States. And basically, he said that representatives of the people are the proper ultimate authority in all matters of government, and administration is merely the clerical part of the government. And he emphasized rationalism, efficiency, productivity, establish rules, laws, and scientific principles. So Woodrow Wilson said for the first time, we have administrators, and these are the professionals, and they come from our midst, but we've trained these folks, and they have extra knowledge, and we should just let them take care of things. Well, that didn't last, and we needed to move on. We saw at the end of this era a move shift to the employee relations theme, which focused a little more on employees and not just the organization. But in the 1960s, we see the second major change of administration, particularly for law enforcement, and we call that the civil rights era, and that was from the 1960s through the end of the 1970s. And so at this point, scholars and administrators began to broaden their view to include those influences outside of the organization. That is, influences that had some impact on the internal operations of an organization. It was an attempt to move away from a closed systems approach. You know, the closed system as in early policing, where maybe for the older viewers that would remember Joe Friday, Detective Joe Friday, just the facts, ma'am, and I'm the professional and I'll tell you how to do things and I don't really need your help. Just leave me alone and I'll solve all of the world's problems and crime. So we started to move away from that and towards an open system that included people from the outside community, outside of those organizations and agencies. So that moved us to towards a social equity theme within the civil rights era. Um, that was the result of really excellent work that happened just down the road in Syracuse, New York. In 1968, there was the Minnowbrook perspective, and from this conference came a new approach, and it asked administrators to focus really on two, if not three things. One, how can we better serve? How can better services be offered with the available resources that any organization agency has? Two, can the level of service be maintained while spending less? And three, the social equity model also focused on the question, do the services enhance social equity? That one turns out to be important. Ultimately, the model argued that the administration's role should be to increase citizen participation as a means of gaining more direct involvement, especially for the disadvantaged and minorities. So that brings this lecture to the last and final moment, which was the transition to the 21st century. That's occurred since the 1980s till present. And again, the focus moved outside of the organization and more towards social responsibility, paying attention to people and the resulting impact on the public, the clients, and how they had an impact on the input, the output, and feedback of decision making within that organization. And so, in some ways, it was a return to even farther back to the late 1700s, where we focused on the sovereignty of the people and the importance of local rule. And so, there's my lecture. And I would say this last comment in particular brings us to the charge of this committee, of this task force. And we need to focus on the people and officers and how we achieve those lofty goals so eloquently presented to us by Sir Robert Peel. So, in that vein, we have people who are watching live through YouTube. We've had people who've presented some questions or one or two questions through the police reform website at Erie County. And we will have somebody from the Erie County Executive's Office present us one question or comment at a time. And our hope is that people on this committee, once they hear the question or comment, can speak to that if they're interested. And we'll go through one at a time until everybody has a chance to speak, and then we'll move on to the next question. So I'm almost done with my administrative responsibilities, and I will ask somebody from the county to provide us with the first question. I would ask that if you are interested in answering, let's see if I can figure out my technology here. That you either, I don't see a way to raise your hand on this, so if you were to physically raise your hand or type in the chat box that you would like to speak to this question, I would be happy to turn things over to you. So with that said, unless there is something that somebody on the task force would like to say before we get started, we can begin with our first question or comment.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, now we can. Okay, this is Derek from the County Executive's Office. Our first question is, how much time is spent evaluating who applies for the job of a police officer?
Would anybody like to field that question? I can begin, and then hopefully one of our law enforcement members could chime in. So I will tell you that it is a fairly laborious process as it is today. Many of my students are interested in becoming law enforcement officers and to have a career in law enforcement. And so many things go into it, but certainly it begins with signing up with the civil service requirements and meeting all of those requirements for whatever jurisdiction that you're applying for.
Come in.
And then following that, you take the exam. If you score high enough on the exam, you get called. If you get called, you have several more steps that you have to go through. One is a background investigation. There is a psychological testing that goes on. You have to go to the police academy. You have to pass all of the requirements of the police academy. There are, as I said, psychological tests that go into it. And
Marty?
usually a lie detector, and I'll let Dan continue.
Marty, I'm sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I've been trying to speak, and I guess I didn't have my mic plugged in properly. Basically, what you said is true. How long does it take, or how do they review? It really depends upon actually the municipality. Civil service in New York State is up to local. It can be up to the counties or a county commission, personnel commission. But as you said, it's a state exam prepared by the state, and everyone takes the exact same exam unless a local municipality like the city of Buffalo. Cities are different they can have their own civil service commission if they choose to. And Buffalo does, for instance. They have their own exam. They do not have the standard state exam. Another police agency that does not participate in civil service is the New York State Police. They have their own exam. But all sheriff's offices and local town and village police departments are required to use the state civil service exam, as far as I know. But everybody takes that exam. There may be different requirements for each municipality. For instance, the Erie County Sheriff's Office and many of the police agencies in Erie County require a minimum of 60 college credits to even sit for the exam. So there may be different hiring requirements by the department. But here in Erie County, the majority require you to have 60 college credits just to sit for the exam. After you sit for the exam, there is the physical agility, and there is a combined score. I don't know how it's weighted, to be honest with you, the written versus the physical agility, but there is a combined score that ultimately comes over both agility and the written exam. From there, after people have received a score, then there is what they call banding. And banding is it's different than it was when I was first hired. When I was first hired, it was off the top 3. It started with the people in the hundreds, and then it went to the 99 and 98 and all the way down. Well, today they have banding, and it is not uncommon across the United States to do this. So this is not something that only New York does. Banding is where they group people into 100s, 95s, 90s, 85s, 80, and civil service bans people in those groups. And if you're in that group, then anyone in that group can be picked, and there could be a lot of people. So there's some positives and there's some negatives to that. And the positives are that when people it gives you more to look at when they're banded, because you may have several in the 100 band, say, for instance, and it gives the agency the opportunity to interview several people versus maybe there was only one person in that, and say, for instance, they got 100 and a 99 and a 98. And the rule of 3 was how it was done. And you had to hire those people based on that. So if you've banded, it just increases the available pool of people to interview. Just because somebody does well on an exam and physical fitness wise doesn't mean that you are mature enough, as I would say, for the job. During the interview process, you try to weed out to see if people are mature enough for the job, and or can demonstrate some emotional intelligence, which I think we need more training in emotional intelligence. But it's an exhaustive procedure and process. It is not easy to get in or to be hired as a police officer in New York State. So the question is that process good enough for what we think today people should be or um, have in their character or in their abilities to be a police officer.
Okay, thank you, Dan. And I would agree that it is a fairly arduous process. But I would also comment that we're here as a task force because people want to see change, and that's one of the areas that we might be able to find some recommendations after listening to people and talking as a group. Perhaps there could be other things to even add on top of or input instead of some of that process. But it usually takes, I've seen estimates that from the time you start to apply until you get a gun and a badge, that it may take up to, again, on average, 2 years to complete that process. So it takes a while, and people have tried to do it the best they can, and we, yet still have some officers that maybe should find another career. So, Margaret.
Mr. Chairman, I just want some clarification. If I thought the purpose of the next 2 days is people to give us comments. So if they have a question, I would assume that we would write the question down only for the purpose of not answering it, because if you look at the group that's here, some of us wouldn't have the background or expertise to answer those questions. It seemed like we should write the question down and make sure that that question is reflected in what we produce in February that's going to go to the legislature. So the last person's question had to do with, we're very interested in the selection process. How long does it take? What does it entail? Dan just talked about banding, and of course there's other types of banding when it comes to employment. So instead of getting into the weeds, and especially when so many of us here may not know specifically how the sheriff's department, I don't think it's to be answered today. It seems like it's a question to write down to be responded to in our report. So the community has that kind of detail. And then obviously our task is anything that we think can be reflective of changes of that selection process is something else that hopefully comments are brought to our attentions, and the review of the subcommittees can look as to how members of the sheriff's department are selected versus specifically answering those questions tonight.
Sure.
Am I wrong on that?
No, I'll start. And please turn it on. Thank you. So I agree with everything that you said, other than the fact that it is a comment session for today. And if we can give some reasonably short yet knowingly incomplete response to people's questions, the county executive's office thought it would be good for us to give some short responses. We certainly am not making any clarifications that are final today by any means, and I do encourage, as my email sent today, that we're really, what I want to get at today is just that. What are people's comments, their concerns, their hopes, and their perspectives on policing today? And I don't want to lead any of that. I don't want to bias any of that. I just want to take it in as a good researcher would, and then we can consider as we go and continue to meet about all the great questions that I hope we receive. So thank you, and I agree. Is there somebody else that would like to make a comment at this point before we get to the next question?
Hey, Marty, Kevin Barnes here.
Hi, Kevin.
Just to echo a couple things what you guys just said. If we're talking about generalities, yeah, Dan and you hit it right on the head about the civil service is the first step. I mean, you talk about a series of steps of becoming a police officer. So if we're talking to generalities, I mean, it's basically almost the same throughout New York State, like Dan alluded to. It always starts with a civil service test, and you usually stagger the steps by the least expensive to the most expensive. So you're talking about taking a civil service test. It usually leads to a physical agility test if you make the rank on the exam. There's a medical evaluation, psychological evaluation, a polygraph, and eventually a background, usually the last, because that's the most expensive and the most man hours put in. So if the question was specific to the sheriff's department, obviously we don't have that information in front of us. So, I mean, obviously Dan and myself and you just talked about generalities in the selection of police officers, but I think the comment was directed more towards the specific nature of the evaluation of who becomes a sheriff's deputy. So I guess we kind of got to drill down those two different entities.
Yes, excellent comment, Kevin, and I agree with you. I think there is value for the viewing public who may or may not understand at least some general responses to these questions, and it may help them in forming their own personal perspectives or views on any of these important topics. So again, I agree with you that being able to state, here's what generally happens in New York State might be helpful to some of our viewers. Yet we certainly know as a group, we're going to have to drill down and get into the weeds and look very specifically at the policies and practices of the Erie County Sheriff's Office and how we may improve them in the future. So thank you. Is there anybody else that has a comment before we move on?
Marty, I had my digital hand up. This is Miles Gresham. I
Thank you.
think Kevin may have just answered it though. So just to clarify, what Dan was talking about was the general New York State police hiring process and not the one that's necessarily used in Erie County, correct?
Correct. He even went
Okay.
a little national on us. So
Okay.
Had a lot of wisdom.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And I couldn't see your virtual hand, so I apologize.
Yeah,
No worries.
Miles Dan Ditchkowski. Really, that's basically it. We follow New York State civil service laws and regulation, and there are interpretations even at the county level of that. So there are some differences, but for instance, we require the 60 college credits, but that is not a New York State requirement.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, thanks.
Much more than that we'll get into as a group and report back to the public and let them give comment back to us on our findings. Okay, excellent. Could we have our next question, please? Feel like a game show host a little bit. Where did Mr. Smith go?
Everyone can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. One moment here. Okay, so this is the next question. What objective measures can you point to that policing is a problem in Erie County?
That's an excellent question. Does anybody have any comment before the researcher says something?
Derek, can you repeat that question? It sounded like we might have missed a small piece of what you're saying.
Okay, everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What objective measures can you point to that policing is a problem in Erie County?
Is there anybody that would like to respond to that question in a general way?
I think that there is.
Go ahead, Melody.
Thanks. I think that there is substantial qualitative and anecdotal information out there that would suggest that there needs to be changes. I don't think that we are an advanced society that is constantly looking at ways to improve, and I think that there's Margaret's point, this is a great opportunity to really, jot this particular question down and be able to come back tomorrow and provide some very specific particulars. But without this information ahead of time, it'd be very difficult to give you some hard, concrete answers. As a statistician, I would not say anything outside of evidence-based materials. So, but however, I think that there's enough anecdotal and qualitative measures that we can certainly point to.
So I would suggest that those general things that you might point to should be related specifically to the road patrol. I was thinking in my head there are certainly issues that have arisen across Western New York that we could point to, but I wasn't so sure about what our charge is, and that is to focus on the road patrol and those areas that they are the primary law enforcement entity. So I can't agree with you more, Melody, and as a fellow researcher, I will tell you in the community at large that I have with other jurisdictions related to this topic and initiative, and with the group's permission, at some point I would be asking for specific calls for service data, complaint data, use of force data, things that were identified in the governor's report. And then maybe for once, I won't have to analyze it all. I can ask my new friend Melody to help out in that area, and we'll be able to show everybody what the issues are. And I got to say that that is the point, I believe, where the rubber meets the road, and I'm most interested in addressing. I think the national perspective and what we all see on the media comes from two polar opposite ends of the spectrum. And what I had said to the county executive when I accepted the position of chair was that one of my strengths, I believe, is that I like to take localized information and data and come up with localized solutions. And to do that, we need local information, and we'll get that. And then our committee can dive deeply into that, sink our teeth into it, and see what specifically are the problems and how big of a problem it is. So thank you, Melody. I think that was a great response. Margaret.
I know the question focused on, do we have objective evidence that there's a problem in Erie County? And I understand why they're wondering why we're coming together. I would focus on, is there problems in Erie County? Is I think our task is to, like all good organizations, they usually do a self-assessment, but more importantly, those looking from the outside in should be looking at from the perspective of, are we employing the best practices in Western New York, in all our police departments? So it's not like someone is doing something right and someone's doing something wrong, but are we employing the best practices? And are we learning from other jurisdictions who've encountered problems that we might not have encountered in Western New York, but could in the future? So I hope we can look at it in a positive light, as this is a review of, what can we do? Can we offer something that would go into the category of best practices? And that's why the community, and they're telling us their experiences and asking their questions, can put us on that path of hoping to come to the best practices in this community.
Excellent, Margaret. I completely agree. And I would also say that the sheriff's office in its original charge was to look at, to oversee law enforcement for the entire county. And so I think we have a watershed moment. We should take as much advantage of this opportunity as possible. And if we're really good, we will end up being a role model for many other agencies, even farther than Erie County. And I look forward to doing that. But within the confines of what you originally stated, that any good organization, whether we're selling McDonald's hamburgers or making machines for IBM, should be looking at continuous improvement, organizational improvement, and that whole thing that I mentioned before about input, output, and feedback is an old-fashioned way of trying to keep information and people's views alive and help us do what we do better. So I absolutely agree with that, Margaret. Great job. Is there somebody else that would like to make a comment? I will make one more before we get to the next question or comment. And so far, they've been questions. And I would point out that Margaret made a very good observation. It would be very helpful to this group if we could, and at some point, we're going to inform the public. But boy, it would be nice if we could hear people say, talk about experiences with the Road Patrol or the Erie County Sheriff's Office, and point to specific things that we might be able to focus on. And particularly, as the governor has pointed to, we're focusing our efforts on 4 areas: the functions of the police, employing smart and effective policing standards and strategies, fostering community-oriented leadership, culture and accountability, and recruiting and supporting excellent personnel. So particularly as the community may be able to inform our committee with their comments would be especially helpful. So with that said, let's see what the next one is.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So this one is, I guess, a bit more of a comment. If the police have not earned, if the laws are unjust, the system is unjust, how can we ensure that the police can still earn public support? I hope that makes sense.
A bit. Would somebody like to make a comment? Go ahead, Melody. I can see your smile. Do you want to say something and it's general?
Yes, I have a general comment, and I resisted because I wanted to make sure that everyone had an opportunity to talk. But I believe that's exactly the reason why we've been brought together, to really rethink about the policies and to identify ways to improve whatever we can put down on paper to make it more just. I think what the question is basically, if the laws are not just, how could we have faith in? That's the reason why we're here, to really review the laws, or really the policies, and then to see what we can put forth to create the change so that there can be a better relationship between police officers, the criminal justice or police officers, and the larger community.
Excellent. Just so you know, Melody, at times you're freezing on us, but we got most of what you said. Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment on this? I would say that the question or comment began with an assumption, and I don't think it's our place to start with that assumption that it is unjust. Certainly, we can see examples where things have definitely not gone correctly or are unjust. But also, that question or comment was really geared towards all policing, it seems to me, across the United States, and not just our charge, Erie County Sheriff's Office. So that's why I'm a little hesitant to just agree with the first assumption that it is an unjust system and that the laws are unjust. I would certainly, I think we're all here to look at what those, particularly those policies and procedures are that Melody had mentioned, to see how we can make things better for every Erie County resident with the goal of complete equity. And I think everybody is for that on this committee. I know they are. And the question is, how can we help out? I see that Mr. Feliz also has a comment or a response. Isa, could you speak up, please? And try turning on your mic. Okay. Mr. Feliz, do you still want to make a comment?
Yes, I do. Whether the system is unjust or just, if that is the perception of the community, it does not really matter as to whether it is just or not, but it is our charge to take a look at what part of the system do they perceive to be unjust. And we as a group here, we kind of have a charge as to, we need to take a look at that and find out, even though it may be outside of our scope, what kind of recommendations we need to make to the appropriate authorities that can actually make that system to be just, or at least to change the perception of the individuals who believe that the system is unjust.
Okay, excellent comment. Anybody else? Because I think I understand what you're saying, and perception has a lot to do with reality. So we have many things to address in this committee. Margaret.
The comment from the last person, I certainly understand, but I guess I felt like I have to speak because I've spent a lifetime realizing that our systems of laws and our structure is intended to be just. And from my perspective, I've always believed so long as everybody understands their role in this system, the system will be just. But I do understand that there are abuses of the system. So no matter what we see in government, there are those who can abuse the system that brings about injustice. So I think for the person who makes a comment, we need to focus on where did the system go wrong? Because it certainly was designed to be fair and equal, unbiased. That's why Lady Justice always, and you see the scales, has a blindfold. It's not supposed to consider things that could prejudice us. But it is absolutely true as the last comment. If people feel that when they come into a criminal courtroom and they have to make these life-changing decisions, and there are economic factors that, do you go to trial? Do you not go to trial? What are you risking? And sometimes injustices do occur. So, but in the bigger picture, injustices when it comes to law enforcement, how can you have support? You have to have support for the police department. And I think that means that any law enforcement agency, any court system, any part of the system, it is holding people accountable as to what their roles are and making sure that they're fulfilling their roles. And when they're not, holding them accountable for not fulfilling what the system itself envisions it brings about justice. So I hope that the caller and the comment can focus on that. It is this group and it's this community's desire that we need to root out those who are abusing the system, but not have one person abuse the system be representative of all the other people who are trying to make this system fair and just. So I just felt that needed to be said.
Thank you. And I think that is a good comment. I do think that, you know, how things are written are often very nice and intended to be perfect. And everybody wants to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and we all deserve that. And the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, talks not only about citizens, but all people. And so I think that is at the heart of what we're talking about and the intent of everything that's been written in Erie County and elsewhere. And I am very proud to be an American, and I think the system is better than anybody else's, quite frankly. And but it is a tall order to achieve those lofty words. I would, however, point out that we have certainly had times where I talk about it in class between ism, I'll use racism, but racism by intent and racism by effect. And so, racism by intent, we've had a Supreme Court, 200 years ago say that a black person is only 3/5 of a white person. And that was just how it was written, was just horrible and racially wrong. So that was an example of the first. We haven't always gotten it right on that first one. The other one is a more interesting and difficult one to wrap our arms around, and that is impact or racism by effect. And so a classic example I use in criminal justice classes is the federal sentencing guidelines that famously were criticized for the difference between punishments for cocaine, and richer people who could afford powder cocaine were punished. And I want to be clear here, they were punished the same as people who smoked crack cocaine. The punishment was written the same. It was written based on the weight of the amount of cocaine. The problem is crack cocaine, which is used by poorer people, often has no cocaine in it, but always has some adulterants like baking soda or something in it that's used to reduce the quality of the cocaine. Now, since they were all punished based on weight, the richer person received substantially less punishment because their cocaine was better. And that was really the only reason why they got less of a punishment. Now, everybody, by the letter of the law, was punished on the weight. The same thing happened, and let me just finish that thought. So the reason why that became such a famous example is that, once we researched it, we realized that poor people, people in urban centers, and minority residents were more likely to smoke crack cocaine than be able to afford the more expensive powder cocaine, which was being done more typically by white individuals in the suburbs or better. So as a result, there was nothing written that was wrong. It's just how it ended up working out in practice ended up treating some classes of individuals differently than others. So I think that is exactly the kinds of things that I would like to challenge this task force on when we look at the policies and procedures, to think about which one of those, or if any of those, may end up having some impact on some class of people on its effect, not on its intent. And then we could try to clean that up so that everybody is being treated in a more equitable way. So hopefully I've agreed with everybody and put a little extra information in there for us to consider as a group. Anybody want to make any other comment or disagree with me? Okay. If we could have the next question or comment, that would be great.
Okay, if you can hear me all right. I'm paraphrasing a little here, but if somebody could maybe just get into we have a question / concern, or a question / comment about the makeup of the task force, its diversity, the role of each member, where they come from, and how it reflects the community.
Does anybody want to give a comment on that? We can, and I believe at least 3, if not 4 members out of the 13 are minority representatives of our community. So
Raising my hand.
Mr. Solis, our
The,
Latinx representative.
as I stated previously on our last meeting, I thought that, but then again, I was anticipating that there will be people from the public actually present at this meeting. And that's what I suggested, that this meeting should have been used, first of all, at least to give a general overview of what the task and the goals of this task force is, which you did very, very well during your introduction. And then after that, it was for each member to introduce themselves as to who they are, where they come from, including perhaps, their background, their cultural background, and so on and so forth. But obviously, since it does not appear that too many people are presently online with us, perhaps we need to go to a different format, and it's providing basically a short, quick, concise bio to the public of who are the individuals that compose this particular task force.
Excellent, Isa. I would agree with everything that you said, and I thought actually we were going to have the ability to be face to face virtually with members of the public, but that's not the technology that we have right now. So this is the process that we have. My thought, and I don't know if we want people to vote or chime in. People are viewing this from on YouTube from wherever they're viewing it from. I assume across the county at least. We could go around quickly and do what you just said, Isa, and give a 10-second snippet on who we are and what our background is for people that are viewing. But I think for sure we need to do that not only for our report, but for future opportunities where the public has to comment. If we put it out today, for example, and we all went around quickly, then if somebody wanted to join us again tomorrow at 2:00, then they would have more specific information of which to make a comment or ask a question. So I don't know how the group feels, but would you like to go around and quickly introduce yourself? How about, and I can't see only 4 of you, and
I'm okay with that.
I'm seeing 1 yes and 1 no, so I don't, I'm locked, and a smile. So that's 2 smiles, a yes and a no. So, okay, sometimes the chair has to make a decision, and I'm going to say, why don't we quickly go through, introduce yourself, and give people out there in virtual land a brief understanding of who you are and why you were so awesome that we selected you to be on this incredibly important task force. I will start. My name is Marty Floss. I'm a Buffalo boy, born and bred. Lived here since 1863, not me. I am a professor. I'm the director of the Institute for Law and Justice, both at Hilbert College. I've been teaching criminal justice for over 30 years, and I have a PhD in criminal justice from Rutgers University, but I went to ECC and Buffalo State along the way. How about you, Monica? Could you jump in? We could go right around the screen. If you could unmute your mic.
Hi, I'm Monica, and I work with the County Executive's Office, and I'm mostly just here to provide some live streaming assistance.
Excellent. Thank you. Margaret?
I'm Margaret Murphy. I'm a has-been. Most of what I've done for the community has been in the past. I started off as a grassroots community organizer. Later went to law school. My whole life has been surrounded about government and how it's supposed to work. Sometimes challenging it, sometimes supporting it. I'm a former city court judge. I'm also a former assistant corporation counsel, and I'm now an attorney for the Erie County Water Authority.
Thank you. Melody? Unmic, please, Melody. Melody, if you could unmic yourself first and start over.
Yep, I am doing that now. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, Melody Baker. Melody Baker, I'm the National Policy Director for Just Equations. I also own a small firm, Q&A Stats. I'm a statistician. I am finishing. I am also leading the research and the evaluation for New York State Department of Health in partnership with Rockefeller for the first 1,000 days for the state. I have a robust background in education and school discipline, criminal justice. But the thing that I think that I can offer most to this group is being able to bring research and evidence-based practices and being able to evaluate data.
Excellent. And I can really appreciate and love that. Thank you. Miles.
Hello, my name is Miles Gresham. I'm an attorney. Most recently at the Legal Aid Bureau, I was a public defender for 2.5 years. I'm currently a policy fellow with the Partnership for Public Good, which is a fancy way of saying that I look at laws and different kinds of policies and procedures and recommend ones that would make our society more equitable.
Awesome. Excellent, Miles. And you will be, like the rest, extremely valuable to this group. Bill.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bill Krebs. I'm mayor of the village of Springville. Springville has a contract with Erie County Sheriff for round-the-clock road patrol. We also have our own part-time police department in the village of Springville. I'm interested in community policing and how that builds the positive relationships that would make policing Erie County Road Patrol very effective in our village and all around the county.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. Isa. Good.
I am Isa Feliz. I was born in the Dominican Republic, raised in New York City, a U.S. Army engineer veteran, I am actually retired. I used to be the deputy commissioner of the Erie County Probation Department. Fortunately or unfortunately, all the jobs that I have done in my entire life has been government jobs, either military, state, or county level. I work very closely with the Buffalo Police Department in what is called the GIFT Initiative, which entails the heck of a lot of community policing.
Excellent, Isa, and thank you for your service to our country. Brittany Lee.
Brittany Lee Penberthy. I am a criminal defense attorney. I also have a civil practice. My civil practice commonly includes litigation against police officers that we charge committed police misconduct. I also serve as counsel to local municipalities.
Excellent. So I think you'll have some specific evidence maybe that you can bring to the group to answer one of those earlier questions. So thank you very much.
Indeed.
Who else do I have here? I'm going around the horn here. Everyone is just a caller.
Yeah, Marty, it's Kevin Barnes. Do you want me to chime in real quick?
Sure, please.
Okay. Kevin Barnes, I come from kind of split between the law enforcement side and the academic side. I retired about 14 months ago from the New York State Police after a 29-year career. I did 8 years as a trooper, 4 years as a sergeant, and the last several as a lieutenant. I had assignments in internal affairs and our troop headquarters and division headquarters. I also, for the last 12 years, taught criminal justice courses at ECC, hold the rank of associate professor and actually chair of the program. I'm currently on staff at the Erie County Central Police Academy also. So I have an associate's in criminal justice from ECC, a bachelor's from Buff State, and a master's from SUNY Albany, all in criminal justice. So I'd like to think I'm split down the middle between the academic side and law enforcement side.
Excellent, Kevin, and you'll be a great assistance to this committee. Holly, how about you? Could you unmute your mic and introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely, I will. I'll even start my video. Whoop.
That would be awesome. Then everybody in Wonderland can see you. There you are.
Good to see everyone tonight. Holly Hubert here. I'm a former FBI agent. I served in the FBI for 25 years, had several assignments all over the country and several different roles. One of the areas that I worked and supervised was the Civil Rights Program, which I think might be relevant to this task force. And right shortly before I retired for 4 years, I served as the Assistant Special Agent in charge of FBI Buffalo. We covered the 17 counties of Western New York, and I was responsible for all the federal crimes that roll up to the FBI in that role. And in retirement, I started a cybersecurity firm. So in a way, I'm back to being a case agent as I respond to cyber-related crimes and do digital forensics and such. Thank you.
Excellent. And I know you're a true gem for Western New York. Those of us inside know the great expertise that you bring to the table in cybersecurity. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Could we go to Joe Agro? Sorry, Joe.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Joseph Agro. I'm currently a deputy district attorney under John Flynn with the Erie County DA's office. I have been an attorney for almost, 20 years. I started my career under Frank Clark. He hired me almost 20 years ago. I made my way through the office and left when I was in the Felony Trial Bureau to essentially start my own practice, where I was a criminal defense lawyer for almost 12 years, where I did a lot of work with the assigned counsel program. I've handled thousands of cases, from anything from guns and drugs to unfortunate crimes like rape and murder. I was one of the few people certified to handle federal death penalty and death eligible cases here within the Western District. I did a lot of federal work, and I'm all too familiar with the sentencing guidelines that Marty spoke about. Currently, which is why I think John asked me to come back with him back in 2016 to help reshape the office and make some changes over there. Obviously, after being a criminal defense attorney and battling against the Erie County DA's office for 12 years, I think I am able to shed a little bit different perspective. Sometimes my perspective inside the meetings at the office, some people still don't appreciate it, but that's why I'm there. I manage now probably about 80 lawyers under me in the Felony Trial Bureau, Narcotics Bureau, Domestic Violence Bureau, the Buffalo City Court Bureau. Interact all day, every day with police officers. And I've been part of the investigations of unfortunately several police officers over the course of the last few years. So I think I bring a ton of experience as far as the legal side and prosecution and even the defense side within the criminal justice system.
Excellent, Joe. And I'll just encourage you to take all of your experiences and keep fighting in your department for improvements. So you're going to be very helpful to this committee, I can tell.
Thanks, Marty.
Yep. Did I miss anybody on the committee that hasn't? We have a few people on who are supporting us in our endeavors. from the Erie County Sheriff's Office or from the Erie County Executive's Office. But there's also one call-in user that I don't know who it is. And I know that 3 people on our committee were unable to make it. And I'm hoping that that phone caller is one of the 3. So if you could identify yourself, caller in user number 7, that would be helpful. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, that would be even better.
Hey, Marty, it's going to be me. I'm working 2 devices here, so.
Gotcha. Okay.
Ambidextrous, so.
I gotcha. So caller in user number 7 has now been identified as one Kevin Barnes. Okay, so we have everybody has been introduced. For those people watching. You can make up your own minds for right now on your perspectives of this makeup. I think we have a great group that represents wide thinking on this topic and experiences. So I am happy with that. And I would ask Derek if we have another question that we could get to or comment.
That is actually all of the questions and comments we have for today. There were a few more, but you've generally covered all of even other ones that we had with your responses. And so the only other thing we have to add is that there is another meeting scheduled for tomorrow. But if you'd like to discuss as a group, the county executive would like to know if you'd prefer to do an in-person meeting at some time in the future.
Thank you, Derek. I'll let other people speak first. Would anybody like to unmute yourself and add to the conversation? Would you like an in-person meeting going forward? I wish we could poll.
I prefer an in-person meeting going forward, but again, my schedule is extremely flexible and very adaptable.
You're just teasing us because you're recently retired. Thank you very much for your flexibility, Mr. Felice. But I personally will chime in and say I agree. I like in-person meetings, but I would also be open to additional virtual ones, especially if it allows the public to see what's going on. So that's just my thought. I'd like both. Somebody else. Holly?
I'm pretty neutral on it, but if we do an in-person, I vote that it's just one because of the COVID restrictions. And I think there's an impact to the sheriff's office because they'll have to screen people and make sure all the precautions are taken. So I think that's a burden on them a little bit. And it's not exactly safe for all of us to, be around people that we didn't expect to be around. So if we do one, I would vote to limit it to one and do as many Zoom calls that you think are needed. Certainly, I hope these are really well advertised, just to make sure that we do get a good breadth of opinion. But
thank you. And maybe I take it back. I do agree strongly that we should be as safe as possible. And if we can do this virtually and people feel like they can get all of their information shared in a meaningful way, then I'm all for being responsible. Mr. Felice.
In regards to face-to-face meetings, we have to take into consideration perhaps the community that the sheriff departments actually serve, because the issue is that if we hold a meeting here in Buffalo, it is almost impossible to ask someone from Springville or Grand Island to come all the way down to Buffalo just to attend one of those meetings. And that is one of the things that we need to take into consideration when we do all of this, is what are the actual community that the sheriff policing services is engaging. because it is not the local areas where we ourselves mostly hang around.
Okay, excellent. And I guess I was a little confused. I was thinking about a task force meeting, which maybe the public might not have been, a working meeting, if you will. But I absolutely agree that we should uh, provide a process that allows for the maximization of citizen input. And if that is virtual, I think you make a really good point that we have people all over the place. And I would also say that in my uh, more wild dreams, we would have more than 50 people participate and challenge this committee and bring up important issues that they would like to share. And right now, there is a state mandate that we don't meet more than 50 at a time. And there's 13 of us and a handful of support people. So that wouldn't simply allow for a big enough group, even though I'm an in-person kind of person. But I think the realities of where we are, I think I agree with you, Mr. Felice. Anybody else?
I
And
think, Marty, I think that to Issa's point, we should be clear on everywhere that the sheriff's office actually has a road patrol. I mean, I know there's one in Springville. I know that the sheriff's deputies often police county buildings downtown in Buffalo. So, like anywhere where there's interaction between the sheriff's office and civilians, I think maybe we want to take note of that, and then based on that, pick as central a location as possible for a public meeting. I think the only reason to have an in-person meeting is to allow folks, members of the public who may not be as tech savvy, to come and share their opinions. So I'm not opposed to an in-person meeting, but I would think that it would be for the purpose of public comment. So.
Thank you, Miles. And I really agree. What we're trying to do, I mean, the purpose of tonight was to get more feedback from the public. We received a handful of questions, and I would hope that we could get far more input from the public going forward, and more specifically those or any issues that have caused them concern with the Erie County Road Patrol. And so, because that's again our focus. But how we do that, still remains to be determined. And Miles, my only comment is I love the idea, again, of getting more people to give us information. But no matter what we do, if we do have a central location, we have to figure out a way to make it so that it's no more than 50 in a group. I don't want to break the law as a task force on police reform. Okay, does anybody else have a comment? It looks like we were given the opportunity to not only chat, but to poll. So if anybody needs or wants a question that we could poll about, we could start using that function. Okay. So why don't we give it a roll? How many people would like to stick to, we'll do it one at a time, only virtual meeting? Go to your poll. Let's see, can I? I think I'd have to write a question. Okay, having issues. So maybe we're not going to. Okay, there you go. Would you prefer in-person meeting or another virtual meeting? Let's try to answer that. And I'm assuming that was Derek that bailed me out, so thank you. So how the heck do we vote? Boy, I love technology when it works.
Mr. Chair, Dan Dichkoske, Sheriff's Office, may I suggest that if you choose in-person meetings, because we service the majority of the Southtown, southern tier, the eastern portion of the county and the northern portion of the county. We have ECC North and ECC South. And I know that at times when there were questions about the sheriff's office and the road patrol, they were using the gyms. Gymnasiums, there's big auditoriums at the time of day. There's plenty of, I would assume, plenty of space at each of these campuses where you could have a meeting in the south and a meeting in the north, and possibly contact the town supervisors through the supervisor or the town supervisors association or the village mayors, and see how they could communicate with their local townspeople, and but offer them the opportunity to come to one of the campuses to give comment in person. But the issue of 50 people and at a time, and monitoring who comes in, and social distancing and all of those requirements, it could be handled that way. But we have facilities, and I don't think, I can't speak for ECC, but I can't imagine them not providing something of the use of their facilities.
Okay, I think that this is something that can be worked on within the group. There's options here. I'm not so sure that ACC is able to host us. However, I make a recommendation that we put this as a topic for us to discuss at our ongoing, actually, and we come to some agreement. Dan, one thing that I like about your idea, though, is that if we break it up into different portions of the county, that would help deal with the number issue of packing too many people into one centralized location. We could kind of separate and conquer, if you will, and get fewer people in more areas. I know that time is an issue, so how we would organize and publicize that and get people to those different places is an issue. So I think we have lots of things to discuss relative to that, and I think that's something that the task force can take up going forward. We only have a couple minutes left, but that's certainly an important question that we need to consider and come to some resolution on. So is there any other questions from anybody, county executive or otherwise?
Marty, this is Phil Krebs. I agree with what you just said. I think the important thing is that we receive input from the citizens, the residents of Erie County, now as we're forming our response. It's important to get, like we did tonight, the questions or the comments really let us know some concerns that our residents have. And I think that, we don't have to answer those questions or come up with a policy right away, but those were the issues, if you want, that we should address, as Margaret said very early in this meeting. How we get those comments, they could come in multiple ways. Certainly an in-person meeting is one way, and that could be social distance. Remember, a person could come up to a mic that's being recorded, make a statement, and a couple people from the task force could be there to listen. And we don't have to have a response. Email response, as these questions came in. But we have to let the residents of the county know that what's available and that we are actually listening. And that's perhaps something that can be discussed, as Dan said, not only with the local governments, but with the county. And one other thing, I thought we were going to divide up into groups and work on the various aspects of the county's or the state's direction to us. We should decide on that and sort of discuss how we're going to do that. A small group can very easily exchange ideas by email. And that's my opinion.
Excellent. And I can't agree with you more that however we get information, comments, and perceptions from citizens is the most important aspect of this conversation. And I'll speak for Melody and myself as researchers. You don't have a lot to say or analyze if you don't have much data. And I'm not interested in just giving our opinions on issues relative to this. I want to be able to say that we spoke with lots and lots of people and we categorize these people in such a way, and they have so many differing opinions of so many types. And this is why we've looked at to this and this and the other thing. And if we end up with 6 comments and no inputs or inferences or anything else, then we're going to be in a tough spot. So I agree. We should be thinking about as many varied ways as we can. And in regard to your second comment, again, we only have a few minutes, but I would ask everybody to find the email that I sent you today, go to the bottom of the first letter and find a link, and that link will send you directly to a sign-up sheet for one of those 4 focus areas that we have. Several of you, especially you, Bill, got me on notice to make sure it was working. So I thank you for that. And if everybody could sign up, that would be great. And if you want to put your name on more than one committee because you have the energy and the expertise, then please do that. And we will, I'll be able to hopefully have everybody sign up before tomorrow's meeting, and then I'll put some thought into it tonight and think about where we could get how we can get those groups moving tomorrow. Mr. Felice.
Check the access, the access and the security of the spreadsheet. To me, it kept telling me that it was locked and that I was not able to edit it.
Did it have a little button at the top that said enable editing?
Yes, yes, it was. The little pen was there, but it will tell me that I didn't have access to it. That's why I sent you the email.
Okay, well, I signed you up, but I wonder what you did to anger the computer. Just messing with you. I have no idea why that didn't.
I am pretty good at doing that all the time, so don't worry about it.
Margaret.
I won't be able to attend tomorrow. I have to work tomorrow. But I'm going to send an email. I do have an idea, but I don't really want to do it in this forum. So it will go to everybody, and then you guys can talk about it. Something unconventional. Some of you may say, no way. And some of you might say, that's a great way of getting more exposure and more input from the general community by partnering with someone. So I'm going to put it in an email and send it back, as well as I had the same problem. I thought someone must have had the Excel spreadsheet open and hadn't closed it, and that's why I couldn't do anything, but we'll see. So
did you have a group that kind of, or send me an email?
I'll send an email. Yeah, I think that email went to everybody in our group, so I'll reply to all my idea, and then you guys discuss, but I won't be at the meeting tomorrow. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. And that comment can go for everybody. If you didn't sign up today, please do. And if the link didn't work for you, please just send me an email. I'll update it, and then I'll send it out to everybody as soon as I have full participation. Okay? Holly.
Just one thing, I don't think it was mentioned, but we should consider just a hybrid meeting. That EOC that we went to, we all know how to get there. There's parking for all of us, parking for the community. And we can do a hybrid method of obviously having a virtual platform as well, so we can hit all ends of the county. So maybe that's the best answer here, given the time constraints. And I think the county executive made a good point last time when he said, you open these opportunities for people to come and voice their opinion, and they don't do it. And he gave that example about the grant that he had, and people just don't sign up for it. So I'd hate to see, 13 of us go down to, Springville and 2 people show up. So just a hybrid answer might work. The second thing is with regard to the committees, Marty, just if people have a strong preference for 1 or 2, and those are very full, and you have the other ones aren't as full, just put me where you think you need help. Just do what you have to do there. And then my final thing, it might be a dumb question, but is our scope truly limited to the road patrol? Because I think there's so much of the sheriff's office that's beyond the road patrol with the special weapons and tactics and the detectives. And if you look at the problems in the country, a lot of the source of those were, warrant task forces and SWAT teams making entries. So I just want to make sure our scope isn't limited to one thing.
Yeah, I think I agree with you that, and maybe I misspoke. We're talking about the road patrol, but I guess more specifically talking about any Erie County Sheriff's Office personnel who enforces the law in Erie County.
This is Dan from the sheriff's office.
Hold on a second.
Holly, it is everybody. It is all of that. It's all police services.
Right, but not, for example, the corrections division.
None of the jail management division or the civil division.
Right. So I agree with you, Holly, that anybody that can take control over another human being in Erie County from the sheriff's office should be fair game to be considered. Mr.
Yep,
go ahead.
I understood it there. I'm sorry, Marty. I understood it that way, but just today, road patrol was mentioned 2 or 3 times, and I didn't want everybody in the group to only be thinking about the officer in the uniform, because not everybody has a real perspective on how the police operate, how a law enforcement agency operates. That's all. I just wanted clarification from the group.
That's right, and it's a great observation, and quite frankly, I think we're not really giving our opinions, but I think supervision is an important aspect of much of what society is complaining about, and so those aren't people that we generally see and consider as a road patrol. So yes, I think we do need to look at the broader scope. I do want to just make sure that people know out in YouTube that we're not charged with fixing all of policing for the United States or Western New York. It's Erie County Sheriff's Office. So excellent. Isa.
I think most of us have a very limited perception of what the role of the sheriff is. And even though, from my understanding is that this has to do with the policing function of the sheriff department. However, the issue is, do we really know what that is? And I think that we need to reach out to the sheriff for them to tell us exactly what are all the functions under that particular headline. Because if you ask me, and I dealt a lot with them in the buildings and in the courts and so on and so forth. However, in my perception, that was not part of policing. So we kind of need, if they can give us, policing function includes, the SWAT team, the road patrols, the individuals that we have in the courts, and the K9 unit, the helicopter, and so on. That will be great if we can get that information from them.
Excellent.
This is Dan. I can send you that. I thought the last time when I spoke trying to do the PowerPoint didn't work out. That was the purpose behind that. And I thought you guys understood that. What I will do is I will put something in writing for you so you can read it, and it'll be easier for you to understand. if you have any questions, you can direct them to me.
Thank you, Dan. And I would also add that much of that is in the particularly 2 larger volumes of policy and procedure manuals that we each receive. But those are kind of generic organizational charts of which we can identify some of this stuff. But I agree with you, Isa, that we should be getting a firm understanding about what we're talking about and who's involved. All of that's going to have to be included in our ultimate document that needs to be about to the public and allowed for public feedback before we send it to the governor's office. So excellent point. Anyone else? We're a little over our time. Share mine with you if you have anything else that you would like either to tell me what to do or make some other comment. Okay, well, with that, I would like to thank again all of you for volunteering your time to participate in this very important police reform and collaborative task force. We're all busy people, and you are taking significant amounts of your time to help improve our community, and I can't thank you enough for that. And we also have a small army of people from the county executive's office and the sheriff's office who have offered their services to help meetings like this work technically, and others to provide us information that we request. I'll tell everybody who's watching that we have an open invitation to request what information we find needed and important, and we will do that. And so for those of you from the sheriff's office, thank you very much. We will certainly be making requests so that we can have an informed report to submit to the public, and then finally the governor. So with that, as chair, I would like to bring this meeting to a close. I would like to wish you all a well evening. And if you drive someplace like I am, please drive safely. Have a great night, everybody.
Good night.
Everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Marty.
Thank you, Marty. Hey, Marty, I'll be flying tomorrow. I'm not sure if I'll be able to be there the whole time. It's going to be a crazy day. I'll do my best.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care. Thanks.